It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And Rita, let's go over to Andrew McCarthy. Who do we have?
Exactly. Former U.S. Assistant Attorney. Andy, great to have you here. Andy, have you looked into this Act Blue stuff? Because the House has just issued subpoenas. And, of course, the big deal is, was there foreign money that was coming in through potentially Act Blue and then going potentially to Democrats, to big Democrats? I mean, look, Kamala Harris raised, quote, $1 billion. Lots of questions here, Andy.
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell, Rita, much more than what you've described. I think I've always amazed when these stories pop up that we spent 2 years on the claim that Trump was a clandestine agent of Russia under circumstances where there was like zero evidence of actual foreign interference in the election. That was, with respect to Trump, that was just a product of opposition research that the government swallowed whole and used it as the predicate for an investigation. But in these other instances where we have actual gargantuan evidence of foreign interference in the election, it's like we're playing three blind mice.
Yeah, it's amazing. Speaking of three blind mice, did you see this, by the way, that the Supreme Court is essentially forcing RFK Jr. to stay on the ballot in Michigan and Wisconsin? And what's really stunning is if you look at some of the results, I was looking at like Wisconsin and in Michigan. I mean, in some cases, it is like a razor's hair. Like I'm looking right now in Wisconsin, it's 1% where he's getting. But then in Michigan, he's getting right now of likely voters 3%. RFK Jr., of course, he's now with Trump. And he's telling all his voters, hey, vote for Trump. Don't vote for me. He wanted to get off the ballot, Andy, and the Supreme Court said, no, you got to stay on the ballot. What do you make of that?
Well, the two cases are different. One, the Wisconsin case is kind of cut and dry. They have a statute, which is not a very good statute, but it is their law that says that if you seek to get on the ballot and you get on the ballot, you must, take the position even if you don't want it. Well, they can't force you to take the position, but you have to stay on the ballot. And the only exception to that is death. So, I think it's just a bad statute. In Michigan, I think you have an activist Democrat who we got to know a little bit during the 2020 cycle, the Michigan Secretary of State, and she has conflicting explanations for why she initially took RFK off the ballot and then put him back on. That was disturbing to at least some of the Republican judges on the Sixth Circuit, and disturbing, I think, to Justice Gorsuch, who was the dissenter on the case that you're talking about. But I have to say, Rita, my reaction to this is two things. Number one, we're 6 days from the election now. As a practical matter, people have been voting for weeks. And, just physically, they wouldn't have been able to take his name off the ballot at this point if they wanted to. And secondly, if you're into RFK Jr. and you don't know by now that he said, he wound down his campaign and he's endorsing Trump, I have to believe there aren't too many people like that. And it reminds me of when I used to do jury selection, and they'd always ask, like, do you want jurors who don't know anything about the case in the media? And I'd be like, well, some cases you'd have to be living under a rock not to know about them. So you don't want those kind of people. You want like normal people who can be fair.
But I had a true story. I had a cab driver the other day who asked me if Biden is still running. So, I mean, you'll be surprised.
And what did you say, Rita?
I said, let's ask him.
Let's try that. Right.
He's running off at the mouth. I could see that.
Yeah,
he's
sure
very
is.
upset. He realized he got screwed. And his own people screwed him.
Yeah, definitely. So before we let you go, Andy, the Virginia case, we just had on the Attorney General, Jason Mayaras, talking about the decision to now at least be able to not put these non-citizens on the voter rolls. And I mean, that's an extraordinary, and it sets a I think, a powerful precedent. I mean, we got to have faith that people are only citizens who are voting in our elections.
Yeah, I'm delighted to come on after Jason. I think he did just a fabulous job, and Governor Youngkin did a fabulous job on that case. It was preposterous that the Biden-Harris Justice Department was trying. The only rational explanation for that is to try to help people cheat. Jason knows the case better than anyone, so I don't want to be presumptuous and step on anything he said, which I didn't. I only heard the tail end of your discussion with him. But I just think that for them to say they were really trying to protect Americans, because if there had been bureaucratic error, you could have had American citizens who were struck from the rolls and then they wouldn't be able to vote, was nonsense, because under Virginia law, you're allowed to register on the day of the election, and if you attest that you're an American citizen, they have to let you vote. So there was no chance that anybody who was actually legitimately an American citizen who got inadvertently knocked off the rolls was not going to be able to vote. That was just a complete red herring.
Yeah, and they made so many attempts to try to fix. Anybody wants to fix it, they didn't. I agree. Andy, thank you so much. We love having you on.
Thanks, guys. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
Andy.
And, John, when we come back, we got Michael Goodwin coming up.
And he's got some interesting. So what is he going to talk about?
He's going to talk about the contrast between the different closing messages from Kamala Harris and President Trump. He's got some doozies.
Let's take that break.